Kia ora and welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod, and what a difference a week makes, whether that's the All Blacks winning or maybe the pressure coming off Ian Foster or the pressure now going on NZR. So many things have changed in the space of a week, and we've got so much to talk about again today, and we are joined by a special guest to join the usual fellas as well. James Parsons is in the studio, Bryn Hall in Japan, and because we are worldwide, thank you very much, Springbok legend Schalk Burger, for coming into the show today.
How's it, guys? Thank you for waking me up so early. Couldn't we reschedule this for last week? Last Monday, we were sitting here, big smiles, jumping up and down. The alarm went off at 6:30 and everyone had energy. The kids were running around the box. It's a little bit quieter in my house this morning. It's like it's the good old dark Monday. No one waking up. You almost feel like you've got a hangover. But you're right. What a difference a week makes, especially down here for us as South Africans and also for you guys as the All Blacks.
You were there. Could you believe what you were seeing? How much it changed?
Mbombela, the Nelspruit Test match was like the perfect Bok dismantling of how to play the All Blacks, how disciplined they were in their structure. I think we've got such a simple plan that it relies heavily on energy and accuracy from all facets of our play. In Nelspruit and in Ellis Park, we were standing there. I didn't see the turnaround happening. I just thought there was too much for the All Blacks to conquer in 1 week, from how many mistakes they made individually, their kicking game, how our defence rushed and put them under pressure, creating errors, and they didn't get the gain line. They didn't boss the gain line at all. So I thought the box would come down a little bit, actually. And I would think because the All Blacks were desperate, the backs against the wall, it's not only players' livelihoods, it's also the coaches and the staff, that they'll be desperate and they'll come up. And I had a Bok victory by 5 points. I didn't see the big turnaround. And I think that it was a phenomenal test match. And I think the Boks started off slow. You can't, start with a 15-point deficit. They did so well to claw their way back into the game just before halftime. And I think they just left themselves too much to do and ran out of pass for various reasons after that. I think the scoreline sort of flattened the All Blacks because in that second half, we created so many opportunities. We crossed the whitewash quite a few times without, getting the results we wanted to. But all credit to the All Blacks. They came out there. I think Frizzell made a big difference at blindside just for gain line. He mixed it with our big boys. Toka Aho for a second week in a row I thought was outstanding. And that freed up your backs to make better decisions because they had quick ball and gain line, which they didn't have in Nelspruit. So I think all of us were quite shocked when the Boks went 15 points down. They actually, the first 5 minutes, had a good start. They kicked their first ball. They won it back. The All Blacks threw a couple of loose passes, handling errors like they did in Nelspruit. And we thought, oh dear, here we go again. The Boks is on the rampage. And then they got Damian Willemse, yellow card, which we'll probably go through later. I think it was quite harsh on him. I don't think he had anything to do with it. Eben Etzebeth stole the ball. So, and then, in international rugby, you guys have been on the brunt of it against the Irish. When you play with 14 men for any period of time, it's a hard thing to conquer.
It's just what we do now is we play with 14 men for periods of time. No matter.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Let's stay out of that rabbit hole.
I know. It's amazing that the following week, after you guys did it, the Irish got away with it. So Brodie Retallick, he basically soaked the hit up with his cheekbone.
Yeah.
But that's where our job as pundits becomes so hard. You think you know the game, but you've got absolutely no clue.
Yeah. Great sell job.
Yeah, totally. Now, Bryn, we didn't see you last week. I'm really interested to see what you thought of the changes, especially in the way that the backline approached things from the All Blacks this time around.
Yeah, first, I just want to apologise firstly, Jipper, for you being the only person last week, as long, Schalk's here right now, fronting us right now with their loss, and unfortunately last week I wasn't here to do it. So, but no, look, Schalk touched on a few of those points, which I thought they did really, really well. Look, I thought our kicking game was a lot better, and I thought Richie and Davey changed up really, really well, whether it be long exit kicks. I thought take away bar the 2 poor exits that the South Africans were able to score off that. Look, I thought Richie's general play kicking was fantastic, and then even Davey, with the type of attacking kicks to Ardie Savea early on, especially with that line speed that was coming from the South Africans from Monpepe and co. I thought we were a lot better being able to get around with it through kicking and even our execution with passing. You look at Geordie Barrett chucking it to Will Jordan for Sam Kane's try. We just weren't seeing pitches like that last week, being able to get around. So to be honest, I didn't think they were able to do that because we probably haven't shown a lot of A lot of growth and improvement in that area during the Irish series and even the first game against the South Africans. But I thought they were able to get to the edge a lot better, and so we were able to stress the South Africans a lot more. And then our set piece more, I think, again. The South Africans had a lot of opportunities early on. Hondere Pollard and them turned down a lot of points early doors to be able to try and, I guess, get parity in the line out more. And even though we did give a little bit and there were a few penalties, they didn't cross our line. And I think, Jason Ryan, again, has come to the fold around improving that in such a short amount of time. And he'll be able to keep continuing with those groups of men and being able to improve them a lot more. And lastly, I thought the breakdown. And we were just so much better in the breakdown, being able to get quick ball. And look, we've said it a lot. If you can't win the breakdown and you can't win that physicality and get that kind of quick ball that we play at, we see pitches like last week where we weren't able to get around the Springboks line speed defence. So all in all, they made a lot of changes, which I thought they probably weren't going to be able to make, but in 1 week. So I guess that credit comes back to credit to the leadership group, the coaching, and being able to, I guess, make those changes in such a short amount of time, especially at Ellis Park. Look, I've played at Ellis Park, and I know not at a test match level, but in a final, and I know how hostile, and even we're not even talking about the veldt and how hard it is to breathe up there as well. So out in all, Jip, I think it was a great performance, probably one that we weren't expecting, but us as All Blacks, what a great way to play for their coach Ian Foster for such a trying couple of weeks back in New Zealand and South Africa last week.
Yeah, well, based on my comments last week, I sort of said there'd be some key changes that we could make that could give us a chance, and I've been abused profusely online, saying I'm delusional and they don't know what I was smoking. But I'm pretty happy when I woke up and first 20 minutes I thought, man, we're in here, and I probably didn't articulate it as well as I meant it to come across, but I do genuinely think there were just some simple adjustments. So for instance, I spoke about getting rid of the tip passes and the out the back passes and just going direct, and almost having the mindset of we're going to go direct, and your cleaners know, and they don't need to expect to think they're going to get a pass or not. So they're winning those races so that they can win those collisions, as you said, sort of boss the gain line. That was one change that was clear and evident. And then when we went to the tips a little bit later, we got some good gains in between it. But that first half was really, really direct and got us into the game, got our forwards into the game and potentially a bit of confidence. Secondly was not letting the South Africans kick on their terms. So often we just let them kick on their terms, either didn't try and stop them at set piece. We had good parity, if not some dominance at line-out time in terms of turning ball over, and you saw that in the substitution early, getting marks on. But I think there was sort of the confidence was back in the All Blacks' sail by then. And then secondly, I spoke about if we can just hit the breakdown and not let them set up that centipede and just take forever and a day to kick it, and we can't get at them in pressure. You see in the 15th minute, De Groot hits it, Whitelock hits it, and the ball bounces out the back, and they have to rush that kick, and it kicks long. So then we don't need to worry about our escort game. And then in a couple of other instances, we're hitting that ruck, we've got Barrett's pressure, and the kick's not as accurate. And then when we had to escort, we escorted a lot better. So all in all, that frustration came. And then if you watch late in the piece around the Springboks box kicks, as we were tired, obviously, because it was about the 60-minute mark. We weren't hitting the ruck, but because the damage had been done and the fear of that ruck being hit, they were rushing their kicks still, and they couldn't get that competition for their wingers up in the air, which was massive. Bryn sort of touched on the kicking game, but I feel like those sort of three areas of set piece parity, not letting the Springboks kick on their terms, and our ability to just put the tip pass away and the fancy stuff and just going direct were massive. And I said last week, those are small shifts. They are little small mindset shifts, but they make a huge difference against a game plan, as you'd know, Schalk, that is, it is very clear that's the style you like to play. And when you do it well, it's pretty hard to play against. But when you do have the ability to adjust the thinking and rush the strategy around that, it is quite an effective weapon against that style.
When that goes away, you see the Springboks play with width, and they're bloody good at it. And you want to see it more.
Yeah, I guess our hand was forced. We were 15 points down, and I guess that's where the substitutions came on quite early. And I think just before halftime, our coaching staff, that's what we do. We back that bench. That's where we go 6-2. We brought on a couple of big names, and we we got our foot into the game 15-10. But I guess, James, you mentioned it. It was game line. It's being direct first. The space will come later. That's how you play against the rush. You can't go like the first week, tip, because our rush won't stop. It's not a rush for 5 meters. They carry on 10, 15, 20 yards. They catch you behind the gain line. And for me, it was interesting where they found the width or the space, and it was out in their own 22, where we would probably have extra man in the backfield, relying on you guys to kick it long. You've played with a long kicking game the first Test match. It changed around the second Test match. For me as well, the big change we made, Damien Willems went off as a fullback, and we brought Willie Leroux on. And instead of just, I think, stick him on the right wing where Jesse Kriel was, he moved to the fullback. Damien the Islander moved to 13. Lukana went to the wing. He was ridiculous on the wing, by the way. I think he must have had like 1,000 running meters, just joking. But on the weekend, he was incredible. And we moved Damien Willems to 12. So one injury brought along 4 positional changes. And I think the biggest benefit of having Lukana at 13 is just how good he defends. And he's one of those players that gets himself in between the ball and the man, and we defend the ball. There's always men over. And I think that sort of robbed us of confidence of just going up and get them. That, coupled with our work rate, if we don't set early as a rush, if we don't dominate the gain line, it's the hardest thing to still back the rush, because then you feel super vulnerable. And I think that's where the All Blacks got us on the weekend. So that was the one thing for me. You mentioned when we started playing rugby, we've got some phenomenal rugby players, and the width we created. I think Willie Leroux's passes off his left hand on the weekend was unbelievable. And he always runs that nice little arc. And when you pick them up, I think pick him up, and he's got that little hitch kick. He's got that little outside swift, and then he pulls the trigger off the left hand. He was incredible. Damien Willems is playing ridiculous rugby as a back, and we really chased that game hard. You can go through it and you think, was that first intercept try knock on off Oxen Chair, Sam White, was it a strip? It probably was a strip, but it was called as a knock on. Foot and touch, Damien Willems scores the second one. The small little bump obstruction from Jaden Hendricks, Makazole Mapimpi scores in the left corner. The complexion of the game looks a little bit different. And that's the margins of international rugby. I think as a whole, the All Blacks did enough to deserve the win out of that game. But a couple of big moments, either other way, it would have been probably one of the great Ellis Park Test matches, and you look at a game that probably could have gone the Springboks' way. So we created heaps of opportunities, but we won a pressure at line-out time with Joseph Dweba starting. He's such a nice player to watch, but his darts is a little bit dodgy. And I think, that was one opportunity that the All Blacks snuffed out early on. Obviously, starting with Dwayne Vermeulen back from injury. Love Dwayne. He's one of my best mates, one of our talisman as rugby. Maybe it was not the right Test match to bring him back into. Obviously, he lasted 30 minutes and got changed out. And then I think that positional switch for defence was a big one.
They do have some interesting selection policies at the moment, don't they? It feels like Ninaba and Erasmus are willing to sacrifice Test matches in the name of the World Cup, which is not an approach we do in New Zealand. You win every single Test. But in South Africa, it seems World Cup above all. I guess that's what we target. But look, we wanted to win this Test match. I think what they do beforehand is they super well plan every single Test match. Players they want to give minutes, players they want to bring back, see if they still good enough to make it to the World Cup. Older players like a Frans Steyn, Dwayne Vermeulen, younger players like a Joseph Dweba. They want to introduce them in the big stage because they want to create that depth. And because we do the 6-2 split, look, that 6-2 split runs risks, and we're so lucky. We've been so lucky for since 2019 World Cup, where we've lost 2 backs early on, and somehow not a single another back gets injured, or Kwagga Smith helps out on the wing or centre. So it has its risks, but we pick sides with the comfort that we know we've got another pack of forwards that we can bring on. I think you think that this week will be a hard pill to swallow for the Boks, because I think they truly believed after Nelspruit they had the All Blacks for the taking, and I think all of us felt the same way. Hindsight's perfect. You think now you should have probably played the players who had the biggest impact in that first Test match. Malcolm Marx, why don't start him? Why don't
I ask that question every week,
give the All Black, why give the All Blacks a foothold in the game? Why don't keep your foot on the throat and go for him?
because we ask so many times on this podcast like why Malcolm Marx doesn't start every single weekend, because
And play
like
70
arguably
minutes.
he's arguably one of the best hookers in the world. So I guess just from a South African perspective, like what's the reason why they probably think that they want to bring him off the bench, or even you see on the weekend he comes on in the first 25, 28 minutes. Why not start him? What are the reasons behind that?
Yeah, Bryn, I think we ask the question sometimes ourselves. He's only started half the test matches he's played. He's played 52. I think he started 26 of them, or 51 and started 26 of them. He's such a good player, but I think his value is there in both cases. Like as a starter, he's the best in the world, and I think coming off the bench, he can change the complexion of the game. And I think it's also got to do something with the combination. So if Bongi Mbonambi was meant to start on the weekend, he tweaked his knee on the Thursday. If him and Oxenchair starts with Frans Malherbe, I think they're the best scrumming unit to start a test match with. And then when they come back, just through the sheer body build, Malcolm Marx, Stephen Kitsoff and Vincent Koch is our second best scrumming unit we've got. So I think that plays a big role in it. So if Malcolm Marx starts, then we'll probably see Stephen Kitsoff starting a bit more. And Stephen Kitsoff, believe it or not, I think he holds the record for South Africa for most appearances off the bench. It's 49 out of how many test matches he's played. And there's another player where you've got a case in point for you, can he start? But I think it's all about the combinations and how our team set up to empty their tanks, put as much pressure, and the reward really comes late. But yeah, I mean, Malcolm Marx is a phenomenal player, and his performance in Nelspruit was probably match-defining.
Oh, it was huge. But every time, I agree, like he does come off the bench and, man, he turns games on its head. But I don't know, maybe I'm a fanboy of Malcolm Marx, but like I just reckon he could play 60, 70 every week, like and deliver the same performance. Yeah. But it does show the difference in mindset, whereas we probably look at our players so much from an attacking and defence and probably don't fixate on that combination at that set piece and being really clear on that. That's the sort of last box we tick rather than the impact that players can make around the field. I found that interesting just then because it does make sense when it's explained that way.
I think we set up for test match footy. And we've got, as we mentioned, we've got certain things that we really want to test players against. And I think the one thing when you play the box and you watch the games live, which is evident, everything you do against the box, saps energy. We scrum for long. We maul for long. We make the exit breakdowns a nightmare. We go after every single... There's no free carry against the box. You try and make every carry as hard. Every ruck is a competition. And I think that's the way we set up. And that's why we've got, the six forwards... I like the six forwards when we actually like the weekend. We've got two loose forwards that can come on. I don't fancy it as much as in Nelspruit. We've got two locks, but that was probably forced through just the squad and who was fit and who was available to play. But everything is high in energy. And so when you play against the box, I think sometimes we take away teams' biggest strengths. And I think the first test in Nelspruit for us was perfect in how disciplined and how accurate we was. That when the All Blacks eventually had the balls, they sort of felt dead on their feet. There was not enough work rate to create, time on the ball, carries over the gain line. And I guess that's why we set our team up like it is, that teams are ripe for the picking in the last 20. And that's just our approach to our strength, our in opposition weaknesses. But, I mean, at your point, Malcolm Marx can start every single test match. But Bongi Mbonambi does a phenomenal job for us as a starter. He's got a proper work rate and gets stuck in with Ox and Chair. So we maybe didn't see the best version of the Bok pack this last weekend.
What about the New Zealand pack with a couple of young guys, Fletcher Newell in there?
Yeah. Oh, look, I was really impressed with Fletcher Newell. He looked quite calm and composed. And I know we got done, George Bauer got done for angling in, but they actually had the box pack under pressure in that one scrum that they did get penalised. And I thought massive test for Tyrell Lomax and Ethan de Groot. Like Ethan de Groot's work rate was massive. Man, he was counter-rucking. Talk about making those exit rucks a collision and a fight. He was into everything. Him, Frizzell, Whitelock, Barrett. They just were relentless in that area, especially in that first half, to get the rewards late in the game.
I definitely thought, Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett, what they were able to do, defensively on the ball. We talk around Scott Barrett, how much of a menace he was at putting pressure under Hendrickson around the whole game. And, even though he didn't get a charge down, the amount of pressure that he was communicating to the ref to say if he was on, and then, like you said, Jip, there were a couple of bad kicks where they weren't as good as they were the previous week because they were relentlessly putting pressure on. And then, like you said, at the ruck, being able to make that centipede a little bit shorter. So you're second guessing as a 9. And I know how hard that is when it isn't stable and you're able to kick. But I thought, Sam had some really good moments around influencing a game. Like in that 77th minute, and he got that steal that really set up and I guess stunted that momentum that the South Africans had in that last little passage of play to try and win that game. But look, those two, if you're talking around the engine room and then being able to put in a big effort, because I can imagine going last week, and it was even Aaron Smith said at the start of the week last week around the forward pack, knowing that they were on notice with the performance that they had the week previously. I thought they were outstanding around physicality, around the breakdown, putting pressure around that those kicking games, but then also influencing with the ball in hand, and I think more so influencing with jackals and getting steals at crucial moments in games.
We talk about Malcolm Marx, but Takiaho is in some form. That is no easy cauldron to go into. I don't think he's missed a line out this in his All Black career. He is just, and close to the line, he's just hungry, man. He just wants that ball in his hands, and he backs himself to get across the gain line. And if there's ever a tough carry, he will position himself to have that carry. He's a beast, man. And he just looks so, I don't know, he looks almost more comfortable at test match level than he does at Super and NPC.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, Jipper, after our conversations in recent weeks, was about the All Black pod system, because it seemed to me like they were a little bit closer, they were a little bit tighter, they weren't quite as spread, and it changed their ability as far as getting that LQB was concerned. That's
what I was trying to say before, is sometimes when you're trying to have every option, you catch the ball in the middle and guys have to come from certain width and angles to cut in and win that race into the space for a tip. But I honestly reckon sometimes, we used to do it when we'd play at Super Rugby against the South African sides. It would almost be like, boys, for 20 minutes we are rolling up our sleeves, park the flash stuff and go and earn the right to do it. And you do, as a cleaner, you're like, I've got one job here, and it's to beat him into there to win our ball. And if you start tighter, you've got a better chance of doing that. And that's what I've sort of been harping on about, is that's the only way you can beat physical teams, is you've got to beat them at their own game first before you go to yours.
Lots of clarity there, Bryn. It felt like they had clarity.
Well, it's simplicity.
Yeah.
Because you've got one role.
Yeah, that's it. I think, we talk around physicality and, why the All Blacks shape, not why they're not playing so well, why they're not getting it to the edge. First and foremost, it comes down to the things that Jip and Schalk are talking about, the physicality, the breakdown, and winning those things. And so as a pod, if you've got a pretty simple idea around, for the first 20 minutes, if you use that example that Jip's using, or just in general, we're just going to go through them. So we're going to get the Springboks pack going backwards. And if you see in a lot of those passages of play, due to the fact of how quick the ball, the South Africans weren't set. Scott, you talked about that earlier on. If you are set as a line speed team and you're set and you know exactly who you need to go for, it's so much easier. But if you've got quick ball, you're not set and you can't then make decisions decisively like they did in the previous test. So you look at David Havili-Erling, we shaped them differently with crossfield kicks to Ardie Savea. So as a winger or a backfield, you're thinking, is that a kick option now that they're bringing into the game? Richie was kicking through the middle of the field and exiting quite well. And then I think this is their skill set due to the fact that they were getting quick ball. They were able to get it to the edge. You look at Geordie Barrett's pass that I used previously, or there were a couple of times when they were able to get there, whereas last week they weren't able to. So I hate to harp on about it. We've consistently talked about it, but when you get quick ball, it's usually a breakdown, and then it gives you a lot more time. And playing the team a second week helps as well. It's the same pitch that you're able to train throughout the week, and you're able to see it for a second week. And so those trends, you get to see them and preview them a week more. But that's what I saw. Scott, you might feel a little bit differently, but I thought, the edge play that we're able to do was a lot better than it was a week previously.
Yeah, I've got to agree. And by making it more simple, getting that direct carries with the clean was a big difference. The first week we just saw these little tips in and behind way too early, and they got caught. And players dip inside when they feel the heat. You run away from your support. You fall with the ball inside. The inside jackal marks is always going to be your threat. I really think. Obviously, we said in the week we're not the finished article. We are South African. I think this weekend showed that we're not quite where we want to be for going into a World Cup. Also, for me, the All Blacks, for me, when they're the hardest to play against is when the ruck's very dynamic, and that is anyone picking up and going. Everyone just when the ball's available, play it. It doesn't have to be the 9. And sometimes when a ruck, especially against the rush, is so clean where it's the 9, taking a step, passing it, you as defense get into your rhythm. You know, you get into that rhythm when we're going off the line, we're picking off defenders. But when that ruck is moving and it's a dynamic thing, it's so hard to get off the line because sometimes, you know, you think, is it gone, is it not? And you sort of hesitate, and you can't hesitate with a rush. And to do the rush for 80 minutes is tiresome because you're going up and down, you're running shuttles. Yeah, you're doing that. It's not like one of those, like the way you guys defend, which is quite narrow and quite comfortable, and you get to that edge, and then you would come hard for one or two phases and get them to the next edge. I also think like our box weren't very good at game management. You know, we sort of telegraphed the kick through 9, and the All Blacks dropped numbers early. They had 4 in the backfield for most of those exit kicks. Even though our kick plan wasn't as accurate and we back ourselves to go up, I still think the play options on for us. You know, find the space from deep like the All Blacks did against us. You know, having 4 guys in the backfield, the space sits out wide, and then you can kick on your terms, where it almost felt like we kicked to the All Blacks having 4 in the backfield, and it's so hard to go through all those bodies and still get up in the air. And just on a little technical fault with Jaden Hendricks, his strike zone was wide. It was up the back of the ruck, and we know we've got that blocker that basically just, you know, tries to make it difficult to the charge down. But that's not where the strike zone should be. The strike zone should be behind the ruck. The ruck, no one can jump through a ruck and get a charge down. So Jaden Hendricks was just getting out too wide, and then he was getting in Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett's eye line, and that's what threw him off. But like if we're chasing a game, the box, and Beauden Barrett gets a yellow card for a professional foul on Jaden Hendricks, and I was sitting with John Smith, and he was going to take the points, and I was like, let's go for touch. We've chased this game the entire way. We've now got a chance to actually mentally dent the All Blacks. Even if we didn't score in that first line-out maul, because the line-out maul defense was so good, they were on a team warning anyway there. So there's a good chance they'll go down to 13. Anyway, we didn't happen. We get the 3 points. We exit poorly through Jaden Hendricks. Again, that strike zone was a bit too wide and got into Sam Whitelock's eye line, and he hooked it out straight in touch. But then we get 2 attacking set pieces to fire away at the All Blacks, trailing the game, and we revert to the maul on a box kick deep up the field, where I feel like that is when you die wondering. Give yourself a chance. And we saw that our outside backs did create opportunities off the back of some good, strong forward carries. And I just thought we had a chance to really go for them and put them under pressure, which unfortunately for us, just through a bit of game management, I think we made the wrong decision.
What I really want to know is, let's say 2007 World Cup, would you have been saying the same thing to John Smith on the field? Come on, mate.
No, not in the final at least. The final was such a cagey affair, and you know, we would play the English, and the nice thing about playing the English, the rest of the rugby world is also supporting you, so we had a lot of pressure on their shoulders.
Go for it, Bryn.
Agree with you around that, Schalk, because like obviously your line out more so dominant, you score so many tries off there, and you know probably the last 2 weeks they haven't been able to get over the dotted line. But you know, I think you even look at who was it, Arms try. You know, the ability with Willemse, Leroux, and Andre Pollard with their ball decision, with their ball being able to pass the ball so long and flat. You know, you look at that try. There's a couple of times Willie Leroux was able to get on the outside because you know Caleb Clark and Rico had the first 4 mindset where they had to try and get that guy that was animated around the back and Leroux on a bounce. I just love to see them use it more, you know, because you know we know that they're going to be able to, they can score their try, but you know if they can't score that, how can they? I guess you know they could do bunter plays where they can go through that transition or use it a little bit more in the backs, because you know I think Pollard and you know Leroux arguably probably have the best long ball passes in the world that I think. Always have it on a tee. You look at Willemse's, you know, bridge pass, but if they can get those 2 quick passes, it's so good to see, and I just love to see it a lot more.
Yeah, Bryn, that was exactly it. We felt that we went to the mall, and I was screaming out the top of from our commentating boxes. No, we got to have a go. You know, we didn't show enough variety on the weekend, and it's one thing to you know play this game plan where you take the speed out of the game against the All Blacks and stick and be so disciplined to it. Sometimes the game throw up a curveball, like the Box didn't think they want to trail a game by 15 points against the Box and then against the All Blacks and then chase it. And they were chasing it, and they were actually playing some decent stuff. And I think there's nothing wrong with trying to put a team under a different sort of pressure, get into the vacuum, get around the corner, and then on the sweep have the long ball option at the back with Wallaroos with the hedge kick. Damien Willems plays 12 URC predominantly, and he's so good on the ball. And at fullback he's doing a good job for us there. But the 2 test matches where he's moved in closer is against Wales. We were chasing a game. We were trailing by 18 points at halftime, and he came out, filled in at fly half, and transformed the way the team was attacking with his work rate in and around our forwards. Henry Pollard, we know, has got that flat pass, and he's also got the ability to take it to the line. And I think he's growing into confidence. I know he had a frustrating year with injuries, and I think he's a little bit undercooked still, just from confidence-wise, him carrying it to the line, because I think that would really straighten up our attack. And then you can have guys like Damien Dallin and Damien Willems up stepping at first receiver and actually pulling the trigger. But yeah, it was a bit frustrating into the game. But I think the game proved that, we can mix it with the All Blacks when it comes to, playing rugby, toe-to-toe in the wider channels.
And I think as well, if you look at the Irish series and if you look at Ireland's victory and the French victory at the end of your tour against the All Blacks, is they didn't go anywhere. Like, they could have taken the points so many times in these test matches, and they kept banding away, go to the corner, and that saps energy. Like, if you're, going against the maul, that saps energy, and if they keep building phases, they've got bodies in motion, you can't hold that out, and it does put them under different pressure, like you say, is going to the corner and then playing in the 22 and not always going for the 3, which the Springboks did, to be fair, in that first half. They just went away from it once the game got close, and they sort of fought their way back into it.
I think the tricky thing is, if the kick is like a 90% or 95% kick, you're going to kick it, get the 3 points. I think the Boks will always go for the points. If it's on the touch, and you can kick, the kick is probably a 60% kick, we'll go to touch most times. But I think there's also that game management. Like, I don't know about you guys, but the last 6 months I've watched rugby is how hard it is for teams to exit. Yeah. The Boks obviously exited for free last week in Nelspruit, but any other competition I check, once you give that territory up and you're under pressure, the game sits in your half, for a fair length of time. So for me, like, if you go to touch there and just knock at that door, it might take 5, 6, 7 minutes. But the whole perception of the game, where the game's played, changes. The referee will probably go on a team warning. There's a good chance of you actually going down to 13 men as a defensive unit. And I think it's just rolling with the times. It never used to be the case back in the day. Like, we used to exit quite easily. You could pass it back 20 meters and kick it out. Often now teams kick a little bit shorter, so you get that ruck just outside of the 22. You can't just hoof it off the field. And even if you do so, you're defending another attacking set. And with teams being so accurate in defense, it's not just a 5-minute piece. It tends to eat out a lot of time in the game. So hence the fact that I think, stats will probably show the Boks where they went wrong or what was their best chance of winning that game. And I feared was going for touch at that moment.
Now, all of this happened within, I suppose, the context of an All Black coach under pressure, an All Black captain who's copped a lot of nonsense, in a New Zealand rugby circle where everyone is out to get better results. This win, in the context of all of that, do you feel like that's enough to make people have faith in Ian Foster to carry on in this job?
I don't know about people. Like, that's going to be hard to turn around with one result. Like, it's, as he said, it's been pretty vicious. But I think Schalk's point is he's got the changing room. Like, the players have come out and supported him, and one that's it's great for him, but also a hard thing to walk into if he does get subbed out for another coach that has just heard that the players wanted him to stay. So it is and it's fair to say they've come out pretty firm as well. So it puts them in a tough position.
It does, and it includes people like David Havili, who obviously would fit in pretty well under Scott Robertson, Bryn. Like, these are guys who are Robinson's guys, and they're saying Foster, so they obviously believe in him.
Yeah, they believe in him, but, what's Davey going to say? Like, he's not going to say, I don't trust the coach. So, but it does say that, he does have to have the group, which is the most important thing. People's perception, especially the media back home here, we're going to have our say around what we think. But, I think most importantly, if you've got the group, and as you can see, guys like Artie Severe and Aaron Smith, who are seasoned veterans within the club, and even Davey, who's relatively new, they're backing Ian Foster publicly, on camera. So I think that just shows how he has the group. And I guess it's so weird to have a review after these 2 weeks. I know usually you'd want a bit more confidence within your coaching ranks to be able to have a full season or something like that. But I guess with the added pressure of not winning test matches, it's gone to, what is it now? I think they're going to have a board meeting and decide around who the coaches are. But look, I think the most important thing, Scott, you talked on before we came on air, is being able to have the group, and he's got the group, and I guess that's the kind of decisions that the board will have to take into consideration. But we'll soon find out. I guess we'll find out in the next couple of days if Fozzie's going to be the coach or if they're going to be moving in a different direction.
I agree with you, Bryn, by saying what are they going to say in the cameras, but a lot of the players have come out on their own volition, and it hasn't been a camera in front of them. That's pretty powerful. I don't know. That was pretty powerful to me. That's a massive statement.
I wonder though, this is one win, and they need some consistency. So in order to get the backing of a board, you probably need to stay until the end of the Rugby Championship to give him that chance. And let's face it, let's look at the draw. The All Blacks with 2 Argentina tests at home are now in the box seat to win the Rugby Championship. And you're not going to sack a guy who's just won a trophy, are you, Schalk? You're not.
No, it's a hard one. And I guess that you boys mentioned it. If you've got the shed, if you've got the changing room, you've got any chance of turning it around. For us as South Africans, quite nice to see that you guys are also just normal rugby nation. We go through this drama every single generation, boys. I mean, Jake White nearly got fired in 2006. We lost the coach before the 2019 World Cup. So as well in 1994, Kitch Christie took over. So we've got drama all around, and it's not easy, going through those situations. But I think you actually come out a little bit stronger on the other side. But I mean, you guys, it's nice to see that New Zealand also are mere mortals, and you guys can lose 6 out of 7 test matches, and the coach's head can be on a chopping block. I mean, you had rugby players playing 150 tests and only losing 15, for sakes. I mean, it can't work like that. It's quite nice for us to see that you guys can also play rugby like we do. Like, we can be a little bit inconsistent. But, regarding the coach, it's not my place or time to know whether Fozzie should stay or go. I mean, that's up for the New Zealand Rugby Union. All I can say is he's doing really well with these 2-match contract extensions at the minute.
This is where I'm coming from on this. When I look at Ian Foster's reappointment or non-reappointment, to me it is more than selecting an All Blacks coach. To me, you are selecting the figurehead of New Zealand rugby. We have to battle for people to come back into the stadiums. We need to make sure more people are tuning in. We need to make sure that young people can relate to the coach, who is the overall leader of all of this. We've got to make sure that casual fans can relate. When Scott Robertson waves to the crowd and gives it this one, people are into it. And I just wonder, and I think Scott referred to it maybe a little bit earlier about, the next generation of coaches. I wonder whether it is time, no matter what. This is the time you can bring in Scott Robertson. This is the guy who can bring the rugby community together. This is the guy who can bring New Zealand sport together. This is the guy who we know, on top of all of that, can win a lot of titles. I just wonder whether this is bigger than rugby, Bryn.
Well, I think if the decision is to go with Razor, it needs to be made within the next couple of days. So they're doing this review, and they're going to make a decision if they're going to stick with Fozzie or they're going to go with Razor. I just think we can't afford to go through the Rugby Championship. And I don't think it's fair to Fozzie either to be able to say, you go through the Rugby Championship, we're going to go through another review, and we're going to say, look, you're either going to keep the job or not. And so I think we had the Irish series, and then we had a review, and now we're having another review, and we're just prolonging and not giving the coach's confidence, Fozzie confidence, or the next guy in line to be able to have time to be able to build his program to be able to try and win a World Cup in just over a year. So I can see where you're coming from. Look, I've played under Razor. I have no doubts that he'd be able to do the job and he'd bring something different with the way that he coaches. But that's not to say that Fozzie isn't the man for the job. I think he's got the group, which more importantly that we've touched on, and so I just think it's fair. Whoever does get this coaching gig has to make this decision after the 2 days, whenever it's going to come out this week. You've got to back them to the Rugby World Cup and get rid of these reviews and being able to say, you know what, we're going to die on the sword here with Fozzie for the World Cup and whatever the results are they are, or we're going in a different direction with Razor coming in and giving him the time to be able to try win a World Cup in just over a year.
Felt like Rassie Erasmus was that for the Springboks. He's a guy who's willing to cry on TV while he's telling a story. He's a guy who puts it all out on the line that people can relate to, Schalk. I feel like there's some synergies between those two blokes.
Yeah, I guess Rassie was just the only man for the job when he got it. Alistair Coetzee, unfortunately, we battled under him. And Rassie came up and he had nothing to lose. And whenever you pick up a team like the Boks where they're down in the dumps, it can only go one way. And Rassie was that man to do it. And I think for us, as Boks supporters, the big thing was the culture that was instilled. We almost went back old school to what the Boks stood for, the way we want to play, what is it, what our nation wants to see us play. And the first year when Rassie took over, we had some big performances. We beat the All Blacks for the first time in Youngstown and Wellington in 2018. But we only won 50% of our games, so it does take time. And then 2019, obviously, we won the World Cup. But I think the public can relate to what Rassie and Jock Nieder was trying to do. We respond to the way that the Boks play, the passion that we see every week from them. There's a clear identity to what the Boks stand for. And I think that's sort of gone by the wayside in the previous generation. But the transitions are never easy. It's hard to have one coach take over from another one in mid-time. And you touch on young coaches. I think it's somewhere where in South Africa we really don't have a lot of them. Our probably most experienced young coach is Johan van Graan, who's now gone to Bath abroad. But yeah, we've got this current crop of coaches who are all reasonably young coaches, but we don't have a lot of head coaches that is young. And if you talk about generation of coaches, Fozzie has been part of a golden generation of coaches for you guys as New Zealand rugby. They've been in charge since we were still playing back in 2004, whenever we started. So they've had a lot of success, and I guess the natural progression would be on to someone like a Razor moving forward. But as I mentioned earlier, that's not my decision. He's got enough reviews he's got to worry about. But like if you're a coach and you're getting flown back and forth, and you've got to report to different people, it's hard to be freed up as a coach. And that energy, if you've got an anxious coach or there's speculation about the coach's future, often makes its way into the changing room, which is not an ideal way to play rugby.
Yeah, and it's also backroom stuff. Like, it's not just one man we're talking about. Like, there's a lot of stuff riding on. Like, it must be a challenging environment just with all the stress and pressure. And I think Fozzie made himself human in his after-match speech, just saying how much stress he is under, and he's lost weight and. It's weighing on him, and that almost makes the win more amazing with how they galvanise themselves together. And they've spoken about adversity, and outside the back of adversity, you learn a lot about yourself. And I agree, I totally agree with that. But they do need stability, and I do think that everyone needs clarity. The public want it, but the players, the backroom staff, Fozzie, probably Razor wants to know if he's doing the Crusaders, or we don't even know. We're assuming he's up for it. Do you know what I mean? Like he might not have put his hand up for it. There's just so many assumptions and not a lot of clarity.
But what I do know is the narrative has changed. Certainly from the people I've spoken to, it's gone from, hey, let's get rid of Ian Foster to, this is pretty cruel. Like, Ian Foster's been put in a bad position, and suddenly it's actually NZR getting the bad press. It's not Ian Foster. And over time, that will continue to build, I would have thought.
But that's what I mean. Like, it's pretty disappointing how they've come out, and coming after, Mark Robertson stayed over in South Africa to be able to prolong this tour another week, and then comes out and says, has a media conference around saying, we're going to make a decision when we get back home. Why even say anything? Just wait to get back home and then say, hey, this is going to be the decision that we're going to go through. So for me, it was just pretty frustrating to hear. There was no point around saying, look, we've made a decision. We're going to go back. That's for the board members to be able to make their decision, and then they're going to make it when they go back home. You didn't need to announce that. It just adds more stress, and there was no reason for it. So that's one thing that I was disappointed about. And you could probably see it, but you can see New Zealanders empathising with Fozzie around how they did that. So I don't know, Jip, you might feel a little bit different, but you obviously it might be a little bit different, but. Yeah, that's just how I felt with that whole announcement was yesterday.
Sorry, I'm just laughing.
No.
I'm just laughing. I'm laughing because it's just so funny how to use my own experience, like I was just seriously abused last week for how optimistic I was about the All Blacks, and like just inundated on Instagram and Twitter. And then honestly, from Sunday morning through to now, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, no, totally agreed with you, mate." Yeah, you know, like it's like where were you last Friday when I was getting absolutely got it into? And I think that's something we've got to consider here is there was no support for Foster now. There, like it's just you talk about people engaged in the game. Well, I think we've got a lot of engagement in the game and a lot of interest in it, but there's a reason why you're put in certain positions is to make calls, and they've just got to make it. I know it sounds simple, but I do think there needs to be some clarity for all, just to de-stress it and so you can focus on footy. We know what it's like. You play your best footy when almost your off-the-field stuff is sorted and everything there is just running like a smooth ship, and you can just zone in on what you're needing to achieve in the game on Saturday. And at the moment, there's no one can say that they'd be thinking clearly about footy 24/7 with all the distraction. You just can't avoid it at the moment. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it.
Well, we've got a couple of weeks till we see footy again. New Zealand, Argentina, and Australia, South Africa. We don't have much more time to talk about that game, to be honest. But maybe, Schalk, from your point of view, when you've watched the Wallabies go about what they've done from a really good comeback to, wow, a very average result against Argentina, how do you think that will match up against your Springboks and how they play?
Look, I think both sides have got inconsistencies. We're probably a little bit more consistent than the Wallabies. I know they've had a bit of a disaster regarding players leaving tour, a lot of injuries happening in key positions. And I think that's the way Dave Rennie wants to play is ambitious. He wants to play with width. He wants to play a high-tempo game. Somewhere you need someone to calm that down. Karevi was that man last year at number 12. He was just incredible against the box. He was the point of difference in the 2 test matches, making line breaks, offloads, busting through the middle of our defence, which was incredible to watch. He was in an amazing form last season. So for us, I think, their weakness, if you think, will probably be there's a bit of a soft underbelly in the tight 5. If you really got to push on a number where there's a weakness in the game, and then it will probably be error rate. So both those two things, I think, suit the Boks. But to be honest, we don't have a great record in New Zealand. We're good against the Aussies down in South Africa, but when we play them abroad, we're not that great. We're not playing one of the stadiums where we jinxed that. So Brisbane is a horror show for us as Boks. Our records it's diabolical down there. But we're going down to Adelaide, which is a new experience for everyone. We're playing at the cricket stadium down there, and then we're playing at the new stadium where the old SFS used to be. So it's two happy hunting grounds for us as the Boks. But yeah, I think, as I mentioned, we're not the finished article. So if I could put safe money on it, I think we'll get a result in one of those 2 games and lose one, unfortunately.
You'd have to look at that game, though, on the weekend and see that the 2 areas they struggled was the collision, which was spoken about, which is the Springboks' strength, and the aerial game. 4 tries on the back of not being able to secure up and unders or grubbers in behind in that kick space. And I know they've got a lot of injuries and guys playing out of position, but that's the reality of the situation. And Dave Rennie, straight after the game, was just like, well, you're not going to win a game of rugby if you don't win the breakdown. So, I mean, you'd have to still go down there buoyed with confidence that if you put out the performance you did in week 1 against the All Blacks, it's going to be pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, I guess you're spot on. And we got to ask the right questions. If we put them under pressure and ask them to exit all the time, make tackles, if they want to run from deep, and they are quite loose, they're very loose in the way they attack, that's going to suit us around the breakdown. So, like for us as the Boks, I think we'll be smarting off this loss. I think we will be disappointed in the result that came at Ellis Park, because whenever you find the All Blacks not playing at their best, I mean, it didn't happen very often in our time, but at 09, it was one of those cases. You want to make it count. And 09, we were able to beat you guys 3 times on the bounce. And I think this generation of players have had a lot of heartache against the All Blacks. They only recently started believing that they could beat the All Blacks. So for them, it was a golden opportunity to really, put that belief, into reality. And I guess they've got a point to prove against Australia. After last year, they were really, they're poor in the two test matches up in the Gold Coast and Brisbane, respectively. So I think, our strengths, and the Aussie weaknesses sort of match up nicely for the Boks. But as I mentioned, in Australia, we don't have a great record at all.
Now, Schalk, before we let you go, let's get a little less serious. There's been a lot of code chat, right? Tell us, your favourite opponent to share a beer with after a game and why?
There's many. It's one playing in South Africa. We used to travel a fair bit. We still had the old 14-team Curry Cup, so you go to these smaller little towns and you end up in a pub. And it's always the smaller towns, whether it's Kimberley, we have Bloemfontein, George, Port Elizabeth, where you sort of tend to go larger. There's a similar experience down in Palmerston North. They dragged us from Wellington, and we played the Hurricanes in Palmerston North. And for some reason, we ended up in Jason Eaton's garage.
That doesn't surprise me.
Somewhere between 3 and 5, and we were obviously walking back. I was walking with John de Villiers, and he gets the munchies real bad late night. So we were walking, and we found this little pie shop. And en route there, this little guy from Palmerston North ran to me. He recognized me and Schalk Burger, but he had a big steak pie, and he gave a hug. And as his hand came around, I just felt John de Villiers' hands clamp onto him. It was the longest hug in world rugby because he finished his whole steak pie off the back of the hug. So I had to go buy this guy a steak pie, but we had a good experience in Palmerston North. But I went there twice, and that was enough. I won't be in a hurry back to Palmerston.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so.
Sorry to all our Palmerston viewers. Sorry, guys.
They're realists down in Palmy, mate. They know what's up.
That's
Oh, that's really, really good. What about your favourite off-field yarn about a teammate?
I guess. Bucky Sputter was a special bloke. Just the way he went about his life, he obviously direct translates most things from Afrikaans to English. So Bucky's was one of the guys that I find myself giggling at. And then I shared a room with John de Villiers for yonks, for ages. And he's such a decent bloke, but they give him 2 beers and he turns into something else. He goes absolutely ballistic. My favourite story about him is actually on field. And we were roommates and we were sort of making our way out. We were playing Bloemfontein. It was 2007, just before the World. We were playing against England. Black place is absolutely packed. There's 45,000 people there. And he's lying next to me, and he used to wear these tight medak pants underneath, the white Springbok shorts. And he's lying there, and he's letting out some big farts. And I'm like, partner, this is not going to end well. One of them is going to definitely follow through. And my words weren't even out of my mouth, and I could hear something just go, bah, straight through. And the sheer panic on this bloke's face, you could see, he didn't know whether he could get up. He's got white shorts on. Luckily, he's got this Medex. The assistant coach, Gert Small, comes to him, and he's like, John, you really got to call through to the forwards, and he's like, what the hell is that smell? And John's like, no, I'll get the calls through. But the panic when he got up, and he took 2 steps, and then everything started running down his legs into his socks. I could not recover in time for the game. I was basically catching the first kickoff, giggling like this. I was like, how did I just experience this happening? So the bloke basically sprinted off the pitch. I had to call the team manager to bring a new set of jumpers down in a medic. So it was absolutely incredible to witness.
That's very good. He's going to be shitting himself when he sees that.
That's got to be on our Instagram or something like that. That's the story there. That's got to be a handle or something.
Yeah, that's a great yarn. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We'll have to get John de Villiers on to return fire, so to speak.
For sure, he'll have some good ones too. Don't worry.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. We really appreciated your time and your insight into the games on the weekend. Go well, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks
Scott.
for having
Awesome,
me,
brother.
Thanks for waking me up nice and early on a Monday. And next time, if we have the chat, can we have it post a Bok win, please?
What a
He
treat.
can spit a yarn.
He certainly can.
Feel sorry
Because I'm glad I'm not one of his teammates.
That was a great yarn. Why don't we carry on and have a quick look at the quick fire round, guys? Player of the round for you from the Weekend Rugby Championship.
Sam Whitelock. Huge shift. it could have been any one of the forwards, to be honest. Like that, it was such a performance up front. I thought Rico was outstanding, and for people that say that he's not a centre, if he did not have the pace he has like a winger, he would not have recovered and saved multiple tries through his efforts off the ball. But you can only do it, I say it time and time again, if the numbers 1 to 8 do the business. And Sam Whitelock was huge in the strip, in the defensive effort, getting turnovers, his counter-rucking, and Bryn's mentioned his turnover in the 77th minute, just almost sealed the performance off for me.
For you, Bryn?
Yeah, I went Sammy Whitelock as well. I think, Rico could have gone close. He was rewarded with, man of the match in South Africa, who I thought was defensively outstanding. Like you said, Jip, though the ability to be able to use his speed to be able to have those cover tackles, it's an asset that he has. But look, I thought Sam, I think, the week that's just been happened as well, I think his leadership, it's been talked around a lot around him and helping out Sam Cane and with his leadership roles. And I guess being able to do that in a leadership sense, and then being able to put in the performance that he did on the weekend, he wound back the clock. And I think, desperately, you look at great All Blacks and, legendary kind of status. It's in those kind of test matches that you put your name up against that. And so he was that and everything on the weekend and influenced the game in so many parts. And he was my player of the round for sure.
I just want to touch on a couple more if I can. We've obviously touched on Samasoni, but the big fella, Schalk Burger, giving the tip of the cap to Shannon Frizzell, that's a hell of an acknowledgement of a performance if he's impressed him. So, Shannon did make a big difference in terms of his physicality and as Schalk said, boss the game line. And then Richie Mo'unga, he can't go unnoticed. He created a lot of opportunities off the back of the forward pack, but you still got to have the ability to take it. And then his goal kicking was so crucial, and he was just so calm. And every time he lined up a kick, I was just like, man, that must be loud there. And for someone, he does openly talk about he loves the pressure cooker, absolutely loves it. And when it's the biggest occasion and the biggest pressure cooker, he does have that ability to stand up and deliver. So he's another one.
I thought it was David Harvilli's best test match as well. And, I think the more time that he's going to be able to spend there, I guess it's just with his skill set that he has, and it was probably shown in that test match, whether it be through crossfield kicks, the 50-22s, the middle of the field, being able to put, if Richie can't kick the ball, then he's got that ability to be able to kick as well. So, he's obviously still finding his feet around. He'd probably want to get rid of a few of those errors and that kind of stuff. But I guess with him and Richie, they work so well together. They know each other inside and out. So I know we've got Bodie there as well at 10 who can slot him right to 10. But look, I thought those two in tandem really drove the All Blacks really well and put them in the right positions with the field due to their kicking and their distribution game as well.
World Rugby Player of the Year, who's in the box seat? Is it Lukhanyo Am, Ardie Savea, or Antoine Dupont?
Ardie's got to be up there, man. He just doesn't seem to have a bad game. Arm's the same though. I don't know. And Dupont, obviously, it's a quiet period for him, so it's hard. But I think Dupont would have to be in the box seat because obviously he's the current champion, and if he keeps putting on performances in the French, string a big season together at the back end, he's a chance purely based on result factor. Because if they win the most percentage, that has to be weighed into it, especially in such a key position as 9. But man, those other two, it's hard though. It's such a hard thing to pick. Remember Dusatoir and Jerome, they both were quality, and someone, it's such a brutal.
At least you were comparing apples with apples then.
Yeah. But if you look at impact on the game, Ardie has huge impact on the game. Arm doesn't matter, like you said, on the wing, midfield, defensively, and Dupont is Dupont. He does have a ridiculous amount of impact. That didn't answer it really, Ross, if I'm honest.
No.
I'll go with Dupont. I'll go with Dupont.
What are you thinking, Bryn?
Yeah, like you said, these guys influence games at the highest level, and they do it consistently. But you'd probably have to think, it's so hard to go against Ardie. I just think he's been, in tough test matches, he's just been the best on the park in a losing effort. But I guess, like you said, Jip, the winning factor and how successful the team is, because it's so close. You don't know. You could pick any of these guys. It's percent here or there that they do something a little bit better. But I guess the way of the French and how they are at the moment, where they are classed at the top of the world rankings, that's got to be able to, have some form of, he's positive in being able to win the World Rugby Player of the Year, because these guys influence games consistently, and so you'd have to just think DuPont with winning the Six Nations, and then his success at club level as well, it helps as well. So I'd go anybody, but you'd have to go DuPont.
If you asked a question 2 weeks ago when Johnny Sexton was walking on water, we probably would have had him in there too.
He'd have to be in the mix though. Actually, he would. You talk about game management. Johnny Sexton has that ability of knowing when to go to the corner, or he's got it down to an art form of when things need to happen. He's almost like a coach on the field.
And just on that as well, he's probably one guy out of all those guys in a team. If they don't have Johnny Sexton in Ireland, they're a completely different team. They just don't. I don't think they beat the All Blacks without Johnny Sexton, and that's pretty powerful when there's 14 other players or 22 players.
When he got taken off the field early at Eden Park, they lost their shape.
Exactly, and it just shows how pivotal and how vital he is for their Irish team. So you talk around influencing and most valuable player for the team, and you say World Rugby as well. Johnny Sexton, he'd have to be in that.
All right, it's Johnny Sexton. we've convinced ourselves. We've done it. It's Johnny.
Yeah. Good luck.
Johnny Sexton.
He won't even be nominated now.
All right. Well, he's not going to be available for your team of the week.
No, he's not.
Who's in your team of the week?
I'll go quickly. Gallo from RG. Slipper and De Groot were close, but I went with him 2 tries and muscled over tries and good in his core role. Tokiaho, Lomax, Whitelock, Barrett, Frizzell, Peter Steph de Toit, Artie Savia, Bertrano at 9, Richie Mong at 10, Mpimpi at left wing, Dave Havili at 12, Rico Ioane 13, Boffelli on the right wing, and because Willems has spent so much, he played really well, but he spent so much time in the midfield, I'll have to go Willie LaRue at fullback.
Okay. So did I hear Lucanio Arm there?
No.
You didn't?
No. Boffelli was really good on the right wing.
Yeah.
And Mpimpi was good, and his stats were just too good to leave out.
And Rico was player of the game.
Yeah, and he just didn't spend enough that much time at centre.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Tough making the Parsons 15, that's for sure.
Apparently I'm on something, so maybe don't listen.
Whatever you were on last week, we should all be buying it.
Yeah, I was on to something. Let it go, James.
Let it go. Yeah, but your DMs were very empty this week.
Oh, no, there are a lot of positive ones since Sunday. It's been great. So thanks for the support, people.
Nice.
Make any changes to that, Bryn?
There's a few, not too many. The forward pick's pretty similar. I've gone Gallo as well from Argentina, with Tokiaho, Lomax, Sammy, and Scott Barrett. I thought Matero played pretty well for Argentina, but you can't go past Shannon Frizzell. I've gone
He's a crusader through and through, isn't he?
And then I've actually gone, had to put one Aussie in there. Had to go Valentini. I thought he was actually pretty good for Australia. You could put Artie Sevilla in every single week, and not saying that he didn't have a great game, but I thought, Valentini, it is a world, we're considering all players, and Valentini was really good for Australia. When Bertrano, he was fantastic, and if he can play like that with their forwards giving him some good go-forward ball in the next couple of test matches, he's a really great halfback coming through the system at the moment. I've gone Richie. I went Arm on the left wing, actually. I know he didn't play on the left wing, but I've gone Boffelli as well, who I thought was great for Argentina, ball in hand, aerially as well,
and goal kicking.
Some really good decisions. With David and Rico in the midfield, and I actually went. Who did I go fullback? I went LaRue as well at fullback. I would have gone Phillipsa, but for the fact that he got a yellow card, couldn't just put him in there. But I've got LaRue.
I agree. It was pretty hard on him, that yellow card. It definitely wasn't his.
Yeah.
He was confused too when he went off.
Now, we do have some more international footy coming up this weekend. We don't have any rugby championship. What we do have is an important test for the Black Ferns against the Wallaroos. Now, they're playing Australia in the first of the 2 Laurie O'Reilly tests in Christchurch before going to Adelaide the week after that. They won 23-10 in the Pacific Four Nations Cup against Australia. What do you think is going to happen this time around?
Well, I spent a bit of time, about half a day in the Black Ferns camp, and caught up with Wayne Smith and Mike Cron, and they were just glowing for the thirst for knowledge and drive to be better in the squad and what they're seeing. Smithy was glowing himself. He was like, "This is gold, mate." He goes, "This is outstanding. What I'm seeing and what I'm able to put out there for these players to soak up. So you can only think coaches of that skill set and that experience and that knowledge of what great looks like, and people that love detail, like we're talking love detail, that they're going to be better. Wallaroos might be better, but I am excited for where it could get to, but I still don't think they're necessarily going to pick what they perceive as their best 23. I still think they're creating opportunities to make sure that they pick the exact top 30 players or whatever they're allowed to pick for the World Cup. So I still think there's a lot of opportunity in and around that, and even for players that are in the FPC that are on the outer, you can see that they are so desperate to get back into this environment and squad that they're bringing out some of their best performances. Like on the weekend at Bay of Plenty, you had Les Elder, you had Kendra Reynolds and Apia Tapsell, 6, 7 and 8, and mate, they were so dynamic and so, like, even though they lost, like they were on the losing side, they just at the breakdown, their physicality, their influence on the game was massive, and you can see it's all driven towards making that World Cup squad.
Yeah. And I think also, and I was, before I came to Japan, I caught up with, I was at the airport and saw the Bremner twins, and I talked to them, about the environment around, what are they trying to improve from their Northern Hemisphere team, and so Northern Hemisphere tour, and it was around their skill set and being able to play, and so in that kind of Pacific Nations when they played the Australians, they were wet both games, and so they probably weren't able to show where they'd come through with their skill set, because look, their breakdown when they play the Northern Hemisphere teams, no different in the men's game. That's probably where the Northern Hemisphere teams are a little bit better with us at the moment, and especially in set piece as well. We struggled there last year, but if we can get our attacking brand and being able to play an expansive game and run these teams around, I think it'll be a great way for us to be able to try and win that Rugby World Cup, because you've got Wayne Smith, and you're talking around girls that are hungry to be able to learn and to get better. It's pretty powerful, Jip, when you've got those kind of mindsets of being able to try to get better, and they're full time as well. So if they've got the time to be able to try and get better within their their Bunnings NPC programs and working full time as well in rugby, it's only going to help them. And I think the sevens girls coming back as well, the likes of Stacey Flula, and being able to get Nathan Wong and those kind of girls back into the environment, it's only going to add depth and competition with that group as well. So, fingers crossed they can get the job done against these Wallaroos girls, because it's really important for them to be able to play meaningful test matches with the World Cup just around the corner.
I think what you mentioned about the dedication to a full-time program is quite important, because I ran into Willie Walker, who was in and around the camp as well, obviously coach of the Auckland Storm, and he goes, you can just see the difference of being fully dedicated to rugby, the increase in their skill set, accuracy, and I suppose their attention to detail at training to get things right. He noticed a massive difference. So we're talking, what's that, 8 months that's been in place. You think what it's going to be like in a couple of years' time, and where the women's game can go in terms from an entertainment point of view, and for our game.
Invest in them and they'll come. They'll win some games.
Well, look at the sevens, Ross. You look at the sevens.
And that didn't happen straight away, did it?
Correct, it didn't.
It just shows it takes time. It's not going to be instantaneous.
Tyler is an outside back. She was a 9 for Northland last year, wasn't she?
I think she's someone that could probably play anywhere. She's definitely got the pace, obviously, and the skill set to be a first receiver fullback. She's probably got the pace to be on the wing. Potentially a centre, because defensively and using that speed, maybe not a second 5, and then obviously a 9.
There's options there.
Yeah, plenty.
Plenty.
Most of those sevens girls can cover a lot of spots, though.
Yeah,
they are very versatile through their experience at sevens.
Watching the English and the French last year, you could see the slickness that you see in our sevens team. When it comes to the catch and pass and just those basic skills, there's a good correlation there.
Yeah, the young girl from Bay of Plenty's second 5, Monga, man, she threw like 2 or 3 of these cutout passes on the weekend that were just exceptional, man. And then gave a big Donata who used to score one herself. But she's a young talent coming through that no doubt if they were watching that game, they would have marked her name down. She was awesome.
And then there's like Charmaine McMenamin, Victoria Zabritsky-Nafatali. We've got some old school players who are coming back for a crack at this, Bryn, and that sort of builds that depth in underneath and the experience.
Well, that's exactly what it does. Anytime you can have experience and girls that are hungry, you've got a World Cup just around the corner and you want to be able to be a part of that. And I think, the more that these girls are given opportunities to be fully contracted, you've obviously got the New Zealand Sevens, you've got the New Zealand Women's as well that are going to be fully contracted. And then, also just being able to play in this FPC is really important and being able to get to that standard as well. And so, it's going to take time, like you said, Jip, with the Sevens girls when they had the opportunities from the first point and then to where they are now. They have had that time to be able to build, and so you'd like to think, with that happening, and obviously Aotearoa was there as well. You'd like to think that competition is going to improve and being able to continue to keep getting better for these girls to have opportunities to be able to play at FPC and then play in that Super Rugby Aotearoa, and then being able to play meaningful test matches for the Black Ferns because they need to be given opportunities, and you'd like to think that they're slowly getting them, and a long way that continue.
Great to see you again, Bryn. Thank you very much for coming along again all the way from Japan.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Jip, you'll have a nice spare weekend of no DMs this weekend. So you should just be able to
I just feel so much more at ease that it's not just going off. I tell you what, it was not as satisfying as it would have been for the All Black team to have that victory, but it was very satisfying for me as well.
Well, you've done well not to say I told you so. So
yeah.
Congratulations.
I've worked my way around it.
Awesome, and thank you very much for joining us.